heard the term psionic before?
I have in sense of a science fiction type of thing where people can communicate and there's telepathy and things like that, and it has a bad stigma to it where people say, oh, you're just a bunch of crazies thinking you could do telepathy. But everybody, I think that if you talk to guys like Gary Nolan and things like that, they'll claim that everybody has some form of ability to reach outside of their mind and connect with other things. I think that nature in itself, if we had this little bit of ability to go outside of our mind, it would definitely evolve it and make it part of our initial being, because that helps in our flight type of reactions.
So, can you talk at all to the science that might be behind how the human brain, human consciousness, could possibly engage, if it's real, with a non human intelligence of some kind?
Sure, we have. I mean, if you think of what our brain is, it is like a big ion moving machine where you have all these ions. What ions are is these charged particles that move through your body. And anytime you have a charged particle, it could be affected by outside sources. But what's interesting, a charged particle, these particles could be entangled with other particles that might not be local to them. It might be outside of their head. It might be on the other side of the earth. But we know for a fact that things like that, these particles get entangled. So if you have a neuron and that neuron happens to fire, and that maybe that neuron fires and it says, oh, you're looking at a flower right now, but that neuron is attached to or entangled with somebody else that has a different feeling or an entity that might be able to control that, and they have this like initial blast to you, you might say, oh, look at that flower, but there's no flower there. So there's this entanglement going on between neurons and brains and all of these ions that are flowing in your head.
But I guess what I have difficulty with, I mean, it does sound like science fiction. And the interesting thing is, if it's true, if what Jake is saying is true, the US Air Force never stopped operating the Stargate program. I mean, you talked about Hal Puthoff there. I mean, of course, one of our friends, Hal, was long ago in the 1970s through SRI involved in groundbreaking
Remote,
research with people like
remote
Uri
viewing,
Geller,
yeah, sure, yeah.
looking at the whole issue of telepathy and psychic phenomena. My understanding is that, and of course this has been made into a Hollywood movie, the George Clooney movie, The Men Who Stare at Goats. My
Yes.
understanding is that the whole thing was poo-pooed and played down. But what really shocked me when I started doing the background research for this story, I looked at the history of the CIA's Stargate program. And even presidents at the time, President Carter, for example, were acknowledging that there had been successful use of things like remote viewing technology to assist in the recovery of an aircraft in one case. Um, it does appear that while you've got the official position in modern science is that telepathy, psychic phenomena, that kind of non-local engagement of the human mind with something
Yeah.
external, it's dismissed as nonsense. And yet it's quite clear, if you look at the succession of documents in the CIA archive, they've continued that research over many, many years. They never stopped. Is this something you're familiar with? What do you know about the whole science of the idea that the human brain could possibly engage with something outside of the human brain other than just normal verbal or written communication?
So ironically, I worked for Hal in his institute in Austin for 11 years. And one of the experiments that he asked me to do was he said, if I took two sentient objects and I had them together for a little while and then I separated them and I convinced the other ones that there is no physical connection. Like I put them in a Faraday cage, I put a barrier, and I do something sinister to one of them, will the other one react? Or if I do something really nice to one of them, will the other one react? So we took epithelial cells and we put them together and they let them entangle, separated them, and maybe we put a little some Clorox or something bad into one of them. And after enough trials, we found out that we can get two cells to communicate through a barrier, through either a Faraday cage, meaning that there's no electromagnetic signals, or we had them enclosed so there's no chemical signal, no fermions or anything. Um, but we got them to communicate. We had enough statistics to show that there was actually a communication.